sure you're aware of is that if you had a look at many crops 100 years ago, they were this high, and now they're this high. So the question I'd really sort of ask is, we've selected for crops that particularly produce a large amount of grain. Do you think there'll come a time when we'll start actually looking for wheat or barley crops which are taller, because there'll be more opportunity of getting other mass from them that we can utilise for biofuels?
In a nutshell, yes. I mean, as Jerry said, we've bred down crops to be quite short, largely because if they're too tall, they fall over, which is called lodging, which is a big problem in arable farming. So that's why we've tried to breed crops to be quite short. Straw has been a waste product, broadly speaking, a waste product. But if this stuff becomes valuable, and I mean really valuable, so in the eastern part of east of England, it probably doesn't have much of a value at all. And the reason for that is that it's bulky, and to transport it to anywhere where people might want to use it will cost a lot of money. In the west of the country, where there are a lot of livestock farmers, this stuff's quite valuable. Sometimes it could be £70 a tonne, £80 a tonne. But if this becomes really valuable, because Greg and colleagues can turn this into petrol, it could be worth £200 a tonne, for example. And if that happens, then farmers will want to grow as much of this as possible, as well as grain. So I think that we could see a reversal of that, but hopefully without minimising too much of how much grain we produce. Yeah.
So sort of using natural things like termites that my daughter in Australia has trouble with, because they've presumably got something in their guts as well, or the bacterium cow stomachs in ruminants.
Termites? I have no idea, but why not? Yeah. I mean, Greg's looking at getting fungi from nature, but
they presumably
break something down.
Oh, termites?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got the bugs in their stomach.
Oh,
So
they've got those bugs in
they've got the same bugs.
Right, so they're like ruminants, but in insect milk.
Is there another question? Oh gosh, they're all over the place. Yep. Well, I mean, so in the east, in a lot of the parts of the east of England, this gets chopped, put back in the soil. In certain parts of the country, it doesn't. It actually does get baled. It gets taken off, gets used for animal bedding that then eventually comes back into the soil through animal manures, so it does get returned. But even when we've broken this stuff down, we're not going to be using it all up. I'm not quite sure what this looks like once we've taken out all of the, broadly speaking, sugars that we want and what's going to be left. But there will be a residue, and we need to then work out how easy it is to get that back onto the land. But there are issues because it does remove nutrients by taking it away. But it may be that we end up with farmers supplying straw every other year or something, so that they're not constantly removing the straw from their farm, but they're doing it over a period of time.
There was a study quite recently in France where they found that if they only really needed to leave between 10 and 20% of the straw to maintain the quality. So there's a large amount you can remove without it being a problem.
So if the straw can be used for the fungi to eat and the yeast to feed on before it's used for fuel, isn't there a way to use it more directly so as to harvest also the energy that they use to survive?
If I understood that, is it you're saying don't bother turning it into fuel?
Well, is there a way to do it more directly so that instead of going through the process of turning it into fuel and losing that energy and burn it?
Yeah. There are a variety of approaches, and we're all looking at all of them at Nottingham. There's the simplest, which is you just take that and put it into a power station, turn it into electricity, and we all drive around in electric cars. There's a slight problem with that, in that if you try to run an aircraft on electricity, you need a 300-ton battery. And the aircraft will never take off. So we can't get away from using liquid fuels because that's how we get the energy density to actually power some of our transport. So that's one thing, we could burn it. Another thing is something called pyrolysis. Please don't ask me what it is. You take the straw and you treat it at very, very high temperatures. It's sort of a flash temperature, so it doesn't burn, so you exclude oxygen. It doesn't burn, but it turns it into something that looks like bitumen. It actually turns it into an oil. You're sort of using high temperature to do what nature has done to it over millions of years by making it into coal and oil. You try to do it in a reactor at very high temperatures. You can get gases from it and oils, which can then be used directly for fuel. The problem is they're not very clean. So the automobile industries don't like the idea of if you put this into the car, the engine will blow up. You can't guarantee what it's going to look like. Ethanol is easier to control. But there are other technologies, yeah, that we're looking at.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming. I hope you've gained something from it. I've learned something from Greg anyway. And hope you come along to the next one.